What's up, everybody? My name is Marybeth Hill. I'm a person of long-term recovery, and I am also somebody who has successfully reintegrated society after incarceration. I am so excited to be bringing you guys back for episode 2 of Breaking Quiet, a podcast made by women for women, a place to lift up women's voices in the reentry and recovery space. And I am so super excited today to have one of my good friends, DK, here with me. She is genuinely one of the best people that I know. She has an amazing story. And so without telling too much about DK and her story, no further ado, DK Stanley. How are you, friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Are you excited?
I am.
I'm excited too. Are you nervous?
Not really.
Okay.
It's just me and you talking, and
Yeah.
we're good friends, so
Exactly.
here we go.
Well, I'm so super excited to have you on Breaking Quiet. It's such a big thing for me, right? To make sure that whenever we start interviewing women in the recovery and the reentry space, that we hear it from all different sides. We talk about recovering out loud and what that means. Like if you look at my shirt, you see that I belong to a fellowship, but that's not the same story for everybody. There are so many different ways for people to find recovery and to stay clean. And so that's why I'm so super excited to talk to you today, to really get your perspective, because there's no such thing as a one size fits all. That's like the biggest stigma that we hear in the recovery space, is that, there's only one way to get clean, one way to do it, and that's not the case, right? Right. So I'm so super excited to get into it. But before we get into the recovery part, tell me a little bit about you and where you came from.
Okay, so born in Searcy, Arkansas, and spent about the first, 4 or 5 years of my life there. And the rest of my life I grew up as a military brat. My mom was in the military, and she was active duty. And so, we kind of moved around some. My brothers moved around a lot more than I had to.
Yeah.
Because when I was born, I was in San Antonio for a while with her, and then she got stationed in Little Rock, and they call that the black hole, know. So I was in 4th grade when she got stationed back there, and so we lived in Cabot, of course, and that's where I spent the remainder of my childhood. I graduated from Cabot, and got married when I was 17. Once... And I got married to a guy from Searcy. And so, I was 17 when I got married. Got divorced when I was 18.
But let's talk about Cabot for a second. So, I was really talking to the last guest that I had on the show, and Tiffany, and I was telling her about, these small towns,
Right.
So, because you're from the same place that I'm from. And when we grow up in these small towns, did substance use look like an issue for you when you were in school, or is that something that you experienced later on in life?
So, it started when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And look, I come from a family where nobody did drugs.
Same.
My dad's never tried a drug in his life. My mom was in the military. She's never, experienced drugs, gone down that road. My brothers, they may have, dabbled in a couple of things, but
Right.
It wasn't anything to the extent that I did. So I come from a very, loving, caring, not a, generational curse type thing. That started with me. But I did start, using drugs, and it was mainly because, hey, I hung out with the wrong people. My brother, when I was 12, he robbed a gas station with his best friend, and his best friend got shot and killed. And
I remember that.
Yes, and at Dude's Place is what it was called. And so
that.
My brother was 18 when that happened, and if you can imagine, he was my best friend. He hung the moon and stars, and that got taken away from me, and that's really when, depression started. I didn't have him around anymore, and it's you've got this 12-year-old little girl, and that's who she looks up to in her life, and that really crushed me. I got made fun of a lot. people started bullying me.
Oh, absolutely. Because
You know.
I remember that. When we lived in a small town, and like nothing really exciting ever happens inside
Yeah.
Cabot, Arkansas. And I will never forget when I heard that Miss Sal, that's who it was. I'll
Yep.
never forget that.
Pam Sal, yep.
And that they robbed that gas station, and it was like the talk of the town. Like these kids who didn't even seem to really have like this troubled past.
Yeah.
But like looking for fast money, and she defended herself and they killed him.
Yeah.
And you think about that a lot. So like that's one of the things I talk about so many times whenever I'm traveling all across the United States. We talk about like trauma, and what the impact of trauma has on individuals, especially in early childhood. And whenever you're young like that, we don't know what the word trauma is.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? We just know that life got really weird, life got chaotic, life got strange, and then you incorporate bullying and stuff into the mix. Like that, what that does to an individual's psyche. Like genuinely, like I'm dealing with that with my daughter right now, and like I look at the school district, especially in these smaller school districts, it's crazy to me, like the amount of like bullying and meanness that are inside of these kids. And then, I have to stop and like really think, like, where's this coming from? Like, is it coming from their home life, or is it coming from their parents? Where are they hearing it? But those are the kind of things, the stepping stones that lead to a path of, unsavory lifestyle choices, addiction, partying, escaping your feelings. Yeah, so I get it. I understand. So that happened. You lost your brother, and then where do we go from there?
So from there, like I said, I got married when I was 17. So I got married very young, and I got married because I got pregnant, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm keeping my family together. This is the way it goes, this is how it's supposed to happen. Wasn't the case. You know what I mean? Like my dad cried when he signed my marriage certificate, and I'm his only full-blooded child.
Right.
My brothers are my half-brothers, but my dad raised them. And so they call him dad. He taught them everything, but I'm the only girl, I'm the youngest, and I'm my dad's baby, And I never seen my dad cry until that day, until he signed my marriage certificate. In that marriage, I mean, we didn't even make it a year.
Right.
Because in all honesty, like we'd only been dating for 6 months, and like that's not enough time to know somebody.
Well, not even that, but society tells us, especially back in those days, society used to tell us like you had to make these certain steps, right? Like you get pregnant, you have the baby, you've got to get married, and you've got to do these things, not even looking at the situation or the circumstances as a whole, right? Like what kind of emotional impact that can have on somebody, especially at 17 years old, whenever you're nowhere near emotionally or mature enough to even understand or comprehend what you're doing in life, Yeah, so that, even though you don't even realize it, was traumatic in itself, right? Like you were a baby having a baby.
Right.
I can relate, right? Like my oldest one is almost 20 years old. I mean, now he's like my built-in best friend, but I had no business at the age, I had no business at the age of 18 taking care of a baby. I didn't know what I was doing, you know? And like depression, man, postpartum depression is something that is so real that nobody really ever talks about, especially when you're young. Like, what am I supposed to do with this baby? You know? So you have the baby, your marriage isn't doing well.
Yeah. I ended up leaving his dad when he was 3 months old. And like I had to leave him while he was at work because he was abusive. He wouldn't let me have a job, so I was kind of like expected to be like this housewife, and leaving had to be one of the hardest things is because, I had nothing. I didn't have money. I didn't have I didn't have money. I could go out and get my own place. I've got this baby, this little boy that I'm taking with me.
Right.
And of course, I didn't do drugs during that pregnancy.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I found out I was pregnant. Yes, I did drugs before that. Quit doing drugs when I found out I was pregnant. Ended up leaving him. And girl, I probably made it, 6 months before I got back into the same people that I knew before I had gotten married and I had left Cabot and moved to Searcy. But now I'm back in Cabot.
Absolutely.
After we divorced. And I had moved back in with my parents. And of course, they were always there for me. they're supportive, and but I mean, that's when it really started getting really bad, is after that, after I went through that whole ordeal, moved back in with my parents, didn't have a job, and I've got this little kid I'm caring for, and, it's like, I guess I was like, well, where do I turn? Well, I want to go hang out with my friends. So I went and hung out with my friends, and where that leads.
Absolutely.
Right down a path of destruction.
Yeah, and then, for right now, especially, mostly anybody that's going to be listening to the podcast are going to be from Arkansas, and, like, that is still, what's so crazy to me, right? Like, how old is your baby? He's about the same age as mine.
He's, 18.
Yeah, 18,
just started
19.
college.
And so, even from then till now, right, like, even in that 19-year span since I've had my kid, the mental health, Arkansas is a mental health desert.
Yeah.
It really is. So, like, if we look at alcohol and drugs as, like, the problem. And, I don't know if you follow the news and see what's going on in the news, but we have a lot of shift in our government right now. They're wanting to build more prisons. They're wanting to do all these things, keep people incarcerated. But if you look at what the problem is as far as why people use drugs and alcohol, right? Yeah. You can always end up tying it back to mental health. You know what I mean? There's always some kind of mental health, no matter which way you look at it. And I look at Arkansas from where we were 18 years ago to now, and I'm like, dang, we haven't really gotten that far. You know what I mean? Like, what is the deal? Like, where is the disconnect that in almost 2 whole decades, we haven't really progressed as far as mental health goes. Now, I will say that there is a lot of things that have happened as far as substance use goes.
Right.
But when you look at the mental health aspect of it, like, we're kind of sitting stagnant.
Yeah.
And so I get it. Like, I get why. I understand it, especially because I've been there. You know what I mean? Like, my mental health was crap. And so what do I do? I'll go back to the things and the people that I found comfort in. Like, that's trauma.
Right. And even if those people aren't good for you, you're just like,
girl, I'm
doing it anyways.
Yeah.
And if you're a hard-headed person, you're just like, this is what I want to do.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do it, and nobody's going to tell me any different.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, I went through that. I'm not even going to lie. Got married 3 more times. Married 3 more times, in a span of like 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's not something I'm proud of, but it's part of my journey.
Absolutely.
And I can look back at it now and laugh.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason why I did that is because, in Arkansas, when you go through a divorce and it involves children, there's a clause in there that states you can't have a person of the opposite sex stay the night with you if you're not married.
So just get married.
And so I'm like, okay, let's just get married. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's really, if you think about it too, like, that's addiction, right? Like, addiction is not just the drugs and alcohol. And if you look at, like, the components of addiction, it can be to men, it could be to shopping, to anything that changes the way that we feel.
Yeah.
And at the time, that was changing the way that you felt.
Right.
So you were having these children in the midst of all of that. How many kids do you have altogether?
So I have 4 altogether. I have 3 boys and a little girl.
Yeah, my little stinker.
Yes.
And I love her. She's the sweetest little thing ever.
She's a spoiled little brat.
Yeah.
I love her, though.
Yeah, so your addiction was really getting in the depths of your addiction during this time,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So with D, we call him D. His real name is Daryl.
Yeah.
So he got his name from me, of course, and my dad. And so I kind of meshed those together.
Yeah.
But with D, so his dad is Hunter Gladden, and of course, Hunter has passed away.
Yeah.
And Hunter has been gone for 3 to 4 years now.
Yeah.
And of course, Hunter was in addiction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've known Hunter my entire life.
Yeah. So, you've got 2 parents that are in addiction, and I carried him around with me everywhere. Like, here I am, doped out of my mind with this baby in a car carrier, just toting him around, and like, you go out there and like all these people have these nicknames for themselves, you know, and then, but you D had his own nickname,
Right.
everybody called him Baby D, and like, so he had his own nickname within the drug community, and I'm not saying, and like, it's not bragged about, but it's just kind of portrays like what kind of state of mind I was in,
But
and
not
what I
just
drugged
that.
my kid through.
Absolutely, but not just that, but like inside that culture, like that it's normalized. Like it literally, like I had kids in addiction as well, and so it wasn't anything for, if you saw me, you saw my kids, and that is just literally the insanity and the disease of addiction that we normalize as addicts, bringing our children with us, to these unsavory places, these people's houses, these places, doing these things with these unsavory people.
Yeah.
And we make it okay in our mind because that's what we need to do to get our next fix.
Yeah.
You
Like
know?
literally leaving him with people that I had just met, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're cool, Hey, I need to go run down here and do this errand, Can you watch him?
Right.
And like, it's a trap house, you know what I mean? It's like, I literally left my kid there, and I would go do what I needed to do and come back and get them,
And it really is only by the grace of God that anything didn't happen
Exactly.
to them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had baby D, couple years later, ended up getting pregnant again. Didn't even find out that I was pregnant until I was 6 months in. I wasn't showing because I was doing so many drugs.
Yeah.
Found out when I was 6 months in, quit doing drugs, but I'd already been doing them for 6 months, Gage was born, and Lonoke County found me. I was on the run. Lonoke County found me 2 days before I was supposed to go in and be induced with him. And so here you have this 9-month pregnant girl in Lonoke County Jail. Sheriff Staley doesn't know what to do, So they bring me in this room, and, and they treat me as good as they can. They give me like 4 mats to sit on. They don't handcuff me to the bench or anything like that. But so Sheriff Staley and the jail administrator met with me in a room. And I told him, I was like, look, I'm going in to have this kid in 2 days. Like, the appointment's already set for me to be induced with this kid. And they kind of talk, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Here's what we can do. We will put an ankle monitor on you. We will release you. And Sheriff Staley looked at me and he said, if you do not turn yourself in, he was like, I'm going to send the cavalry after you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, I will have a police car to get you and pick you up the day you get released from the hospital. So just had this brand new baby, we're bonding and all of that.
Yeah.
And nobody shows up the day I'm getting released. And I'm like, what do I do? Because you don't just want to leave because they're supposed to be there to pick you up,
Did you have a plan for your baby when that happened?
So my parents took my kids and have taken my kids. Now, they didn't take them.
No, took care of them.
But they took care of them. Luckily, I've never had to deal with DHS. My parents have always been there for me to fall back on.
Yeah.
And like still to this day, like my kids, especially D, like loves to go over there during the school. He's over there every weekend. Like my mom was the one who formed that bond with him within that time.
Yeah. It's the same with my kids too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and they love their grandparents, and they're kind of like parent figures to them.
Absolutely.
Because I wasn't around during that pertinent time of, okay, this is when you're supposed to bond with your baby, or this is the age that you bond with your kid. And so they let me out ankle monitor, had my baby with the ankle monitor on. Doctor even looked down and he was like, I like your jewelry. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, thanks, But, my doctor was very cool. Like, he was very aware of, my addiction. And like, and he would talk me through things sometimes, like he was a very supportive doctor, and I used him every time.
Yeah.
And so he really knew my backstory and knew what I was facing and all of that. So Gage was born, they didn't show up. So I called them and I was like, are y'all coming? And they, they got Sheriff Staley, and he got on the phone with me, and he said, look, I'm going to give you 3 days at home. You got to keep the ankle monitor on. I'm going to give you 3 days at home. He's like, but you better be here to turn yourself in 3 days.
What were you on the run from, if you don't let me ask him?
So I was on the run from, of course, drug charges, forgery, theft by receiving. There was kind of a slew of things. My really big trouble didn't come until later on.
Yeah.
But turned myself in after I had Gage, and hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, to walk away from my brand new baby boy. And, and crazy thing is I told him, I was like, look, I don't want my baby having formula. Like, I want him to have breast milk because it helps with, his brain production. It's just better for them.
Yeah.
Girl, they let me breast pump inside of Lonoke County Jail. Like, they were running like a 50-foot extension cord in there every 2 hours and bringing me my breast pump to let me pump for my baby.
Listen, though, but for real, shout out to Lonoke County for doing that, because let's be realistic, right? Like, your experience in jail, especially with him letting you out on an ankle monitor, not handcuffing and chaining you down to a bench, letting you pump while you were in jail, it is not a story that many women get to tell.
Right.
You don't find a lot of compassion in a lot of facilities like that. It's really, and I hate that, right? Like, I hate that whenever we look at the judicial system, the compassion for the person goes out the door.
Yeah.
They are looked at as a person, and they are identified either by their charge or their booking number, and that's and it doesn't matter what those circumstances are, that's how they have to look at it. Now, I understand, that it's hard, right? Especially when you see people coming in there who are frequent flyers, and then you have, I get it. The job and the nature of the job is difficult. Yeah. But for you to have that experience and for them to let you have that experience is crazy, man. And that's awesome. Like, that to me, and I think whether you even realize it at this point or not, kind of started to probably plant a seed that life wasn't, like, everybody in life is not bad. You know what I mean? Like, I can look back in times in my life whenever I had people show me compassion. I'll never forget one time I was in North Little Rock. I got arrested on a theft by receiving charge. Yeah. And when they shook me down, I was pregnant. And I was pregnant with my youngest son. And when they shook me down, they missed a bag of dope and they missed a pipe in my purse. Yeah. And as we're going to the Pulaski County Jail, I tell that cop, I'm like, hey, this is in my purse, and you got my purse up there and you missed it. And I want you to go ahead and find it now. If you need to charge me with it now, charge me with it. But I don't want you to bring this into that facility and then I get a whole nother set of charges for an introduction because we didn't find it. And then in that moment, he took that pipe and he took those drugs and he crushed it for me.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that, I had never had anybody show me any compassion. And I remember as he was taking me into booking, the one thing he said, and this is right before, probably like a year before I got clean, he was like, please, he like begged me. He was like, please, man, you got to get some help.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling of like, you know what I mean? And now it didn't stop me from doing what I was doing, but that was still like that first seed that was planted in me that, that not everybody in law enforcement and not everybody of authority are assholes and out to get me.
Even though it's so small.
Right, so small.
It's so teeny tiny.
Yeah, but it was planted, Yeah. So they let you pump while you're in jail. How long are you in jail?
I was in there for about 6 months. And I did get sentenced to McPherson, of course, and I was there for about a year and a half. And of course, my parents supportive.
Yeah. Well, tell me about McPherson, man. So, we hear about women's prisons and penitentiaries. Whenever you were in McPherson, because I'm always curious, and I'd love to ask people this, like, were you offered any kind of treatment for your substance abuse?
I was not. Like, so you take this, they have you go and like take this little test, and you're like on a risk assessment, you know, and they're like, you know, so they decide, okay, this person needs to be put in this program, you know, or this person doesn't. You know, my charges at that time weren't super huge charges. You know, I was a little bit of a habitual offender.
Yeah.
But it was a small one, you know, and so they didn't make me go through, you know, the drug recovery program there or anything like that. Like, I wasn't worried about getting a year denial, like, because my things were smaller.
Yeah.
You know, but like my parents are who sent me to prison. You know, like I hit, and here comes the theft charge.
Yeah.
Like, I hit a lick on my dad's shop in Cabot, and I lied to him about it. And I took baby D with me to go do it, you know, and, you know, and I denied it and denied it and denied it to my parents. But they knew.
Yeah.
They knew, you know, and my dad is who sent me to prison. And the prosecutor asked him, and like, I didn't know this till later, but like the prosecutor asked him like 5 times, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you positive you want to do this? And my dad was like, yes.
Shout out to your dad, man, for real, because you know, we talk about parents, like we talk about like the enabling factor a lot, you know, like when is enabling really enabling and when is it being helpful, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not only was your dad to pick you up and be there for your kids, which was the most important thing at that time in your life, right? But he was also strong enough to stand firm and be like, hey, you're going to have, you know, there's repercussions for these actions, and you're going to have to feel the consequences for those actions.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dad for being strong, you know?
Yeah, and I hated him at the moment.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
I was just like, how could you do this? You know, and it's just like the mind frame that we're in, you know, poor pitiful me.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you don't know what you're doing, or, you know, and then of course you try to make them feel bad. And, and you cuss at them, and you know, you're so hurtful to them. But when it's all said and done, like, my parents are the people who never gave up on me.
Absolutely.
Like, everybody else was done. Like, my brothers didn't want me around their families because I'm a drug addict. I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do. You know, they distance themselves from me.
Yeah.
You know, which I get.
Yeah.
You know, like, and at that time, you know, it made me even feel more alone, which led to more drugs and more things. But they did what they had to do for their families.
Absolutely.
And I get that. And those are things that you realize later on down the road. But so my dad sends me to prison, and I go to McPherson, and I get put in the senior citizen home.
Stop.
Yes, girl.
Senior citizen
I got
home.
put in the senior citizen home. Every lifer and 80-something-year-old person that you could ever think of. Now, there were young girls in there, and there were some long-termers in there, you know, and I still saw some really messed up things, you know, but I'm sure it wasn't anything that was, you know, that could be compared to what actually went on in the other barracks, you know. And, you know, you kind of, people ask, like, oh, what was your experience like there? Well, the thing is in men's prison, you have gangs and affiliations, and you have all that, and in women's prison you've got, well, you're talking to my girlfriend, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, it is a totally different world, and like, don't get me wrong, like, men fight and stuff like that, but like, they're just going to get down to business. Women will sit back and plan.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you do something to somebody in there, or they think that you're talking to their girlfriend, like, they will sit back for 2 weeks and plot on what they're going to do to you. Like, and just some of the stuff that they do, like, I was just appalled.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget when I was in the feds, and there was these 2 girls in particular, and I won't say their names, but like, it was like a game, like who was going to take whose time, you know what I mean? And they literally took each other's time, man. And one of them was on the way, she was in the programming barracks, and she was on the way out the door. And I'm like, how? And, you know, thank God I found recovery before I went to prison. So I was able to be clear-minded and, like, see what was happening. Because, like, very easily I could have got caught up in the same mix, you know? But, like, took her time. Like, she was on the way out the door and got her kicked out of the program. She no longer qualified for RDAP, and they stuck her back into the general population, and she ended up just doing the rest of her time and stayed there an extra couple of years when she was literally on the way out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is wild to me, man. Like, this is crazy. Like, that's the sickness of being stuck in that cycle, right? Like that prison cycle, you know, that revolving door, and that's just normal culture.
Yeah.
You know, but my prison experience was a little different though. Like, we had families. Did you guys have families in the state prison? Like, we kind of made these little families. Like, we had a mom, sisters, like our little family units.
Nope, we didn't have a family.
No families there.
No families there.
Yeah, no, we had families in the feds.
I was in the senior citizen home. You know what I mean? Like, if I would have had a family, they're all probably about to die in a couple years anyways.
So you were just the grandbaby.
Right.
So did you find recovery after prison?
No. Like, and like, my parents were hoping, you know, okay,
that was
maybe
the
if
thing.
we send her there,
Yeah.
you know, and I did for a little while. And I tried a recovery program when I got out, but, you know, and it lasted for, I don't know, maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, and then, and I've always had a job, like in the later years of my addiction.
Right.
Like, I kept a job because, hey, I've got these kids I got to care for, you know, so I would go and get a waitressing job or a bartending job. You know, I bartended for 13 years, but let me tell you, like, that is not the place for recovery if you're in addiction.
Absolutely.
Like, the restaurant industry is one of the easiest places to get drugs or to you know, come up with an alcohol addiction, and you know, it just made it worse after that. Like, I went right back into it because that's what the people in the restaurant industry do, especially night shifters.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And then after the close of business, like, everybody wants to go out to the bars. It's a big group of us, you know, and so, you know, it didn't end there, but after I got out, so let me see, it was 17, so it was like 2018. Okay, well, then me and my daughter's dad met, Ethan. And we were together for, you know, a couple years, and then I ended up having Eva, and Ethan ended up getting locked up, and then afterwards, I ended up getting locked up while he was locked up, you know, and this was when my big problems started to happen. Like, I was dealing, lived right next to a school.
Yeah.
You know, so of course you catch that charge. You know, they were watching my house for months.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's
and
how
I
you met.
knew it. And I just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, and I was coming home one day, and I mean, girl, I pulled onto the street that my house was on, and they just swarmed me. DEA, Sherwood Police Department, Jacksonville, you know, Lonoke County detectives were there. And in all honesty, like, that was the situation that really set it all in perspective for me.
Yeah.
Because the DEA agent put me in the back of that car that day, and luckily my kids were not home. Like, they were with my parents, and, you know, and this is by the grace of God,
Yeah,
you know,
for
because
sure.
if they would have been there, like, over with,
Yeah.
you know. But that DEA agent came and he opened my door and he said, expect your federal indictment in 6 to 9 months. And of course, I'm freaking out, you know. And so they take me to Pulaski County, and I sat in there for, I don't know, 6 months on a probation revocation, and then I'm facing all these new charges. And then again, my parents are stuck again with having to move me out of my house that I lived in with my kids. They're having to put all my stuff in a storage unit. You know, my parents, they're not the youngest people anymore, you know, and so it put a lot of stress on them. And, you know, so I go for that stint. I end up getting out after, you know, my probation officer's like, yeah, you can be released or whatever. And all that court process took 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, now when I got out after being in there the last time in Pulaski County Jail, and my little girl had been born, you know, and that, I'm not saying like I don't love my little boys, and like I didn't love them enough to get clean. But being away from her, because I prayed for her, like I wanted a little girl so bad, and God gave her to me and then took her away from me.
Yeah.
And then that really put it in perspective for me. Like, you are absolutely, I was a selfish person, and you're not thinking about anybody else in your addiction. And being away from her absolutely crushed me, and so that's when it all got put in perspective. And when I got out, I moved back in with my parents once again, and I put myself in a rehab program. I got a job, but it was an outpatient rehab program.
That's the time that we met. I never forget whenever Toby reached out to me. I had a couple people reach out to me. Charlene reached out to me, and then Toby reached out to me. And it's crazy because we both come from this small town, but you're just a little bit younger than I am.
Yeah.
That our circles never really met. You know, and so when they were like, "Hey, we know this girl. Can you talk to her?" And I'm like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Her case is, similar to yours, and she needs a hope shot." Yeah. And I remember telling you, I never forget when you called me, and I was like, "I don't know if I can give you a hope shot."
I was in tears, man. I was like, and I never met you, you know? And I'm like, okay, I'm fixing to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to call this girl or talk to this lady, and I don't even know who she is. I've never met her, but I'm going to call and talk to her because that's what everybody's telling me I need to do,
Yeah.
And
I remember I told you, I was like, buckle up. Remember I told you that? I was like, you're probably going to go to prison, man, like that. And, and really the only thing I had to base off of was my own experience, you know what I mean? But, so you went to rehab. How long? You were an outpatient? How long did you do that?
That took about 18 months altogether. And, like, I would work during the day, and then I would go do that 3 nights a week. And then I would, work my schedule around that, and I would still work nights sometimes, when I didn't have that, but like I made myself a promise that like I'm not going to sway away from the schedule that I have there.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of self-discipline, but girl, I wanted it so bad. Like I was tired. I had finally had enough. Like I was ran into the ground.
And I talk about that a lot. Like we have to really, that's what the one thing people who are not in addiction, they don't understand, like, why can't you just get it together? You don't know how many times my parents were like, why can't you get it together? You know what I mean?
You have to be ready.
And it wasn't until I was beaten, broken, and disgusted, man. Like I was so sick of myself and all the things that I put myself through, the trauma that I put my kids through. My little baby's the one, and I love my kids too, but man, my little baby's the one who saved me too, because his dad was never going to get it together. And I hate to say that, but I knew that, you know what I mean? And like my mom was really at that point to where like she was like, I don't want to take any more kids, man. Like she was tired, and rightfully so. She'd raised me and my sister and then having to raise a whole new set of kids, But it wasn't until I had reached that bottom that was sufficient enough for me to recover to do something different. My kids couldn't get me clean. Court cases couldn't keep me clean. Nothing could keep me clean until I was sick of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was literally disgusted with myself. That
to
I
even
was
look
like,
at yourself.
yeah, like no, genuinely. Like I didn't even want to look in the mirror at myself. I was so disgusted with myself. I had no eyebrows. You know what I mean? I think it's the funniest thing to think about. Like, whenever we're high and we demolish them. I mean, like, but for real, like everything about my appearance and my insides and my outsides disgusted me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, I got to do something different. You know? And so you got clean all while fighting that court case.
Yep. And so when it all got down to the nitty gritty, like we're there, and like I can remember just praying to God, like, God, please let something, give me a break. Yeah. I didn't have a lawyer yet. I had, of course, a court appointed one who wasn't worth a crap, and I understand that, like, all of them are overloaded. Like,
Absolutely,
I get that, and they can't give the kind of attention if you were to go out and hire one, but, and I think that sucks with our court system too. Like, you're overloading all of these public defenders, and they can't give the kind of representation that these people deserve, and because some of them are at that point where they're like, okay, if I could just get through this, I'm going to get clean.
Listen, and that's why I talk about so much about the power of peer support, right? Because there is nobody in this world who understands and who's going to be more compassionate than it's somebody who's lived through it, right? And so, you know, we have to keep in mind, especially if you're listening to this podcast right now and you are somebody who's going through a situation like this, like we know what kind of compassion we have received in the recovery community. So therefore, sometimes we set this precedent that same compassion should be showed across the board, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? It's not the same. And so like, that's why I until the day that I die, I will always advocate for having people with lived experience in these settings, right? Like in the court systems, in drug court, in district court, in traffic court, whatever, you know, in your petty drug charges. Like if we could have people there to be like, hey, I've been there, let me show you a different way out. It could literally change the trajectory of so many different people's lives. You know what I mean? Like literally, it could do it. It's such a need, man. And I don't know what it would take. You know, I feel like we've made leaps and bounds, right? In the past, especially in like the past 6-7 years, like where we were in Arkansas as far as recovery efforts are to where we are today is like night and day. Kudos to that, right? There's so much more to go, but we've made these huge leaps and bounds.
Like it's no longer cool to do drugs. You know what I mean? Recovery is the cool thing. Like, man. And I see so many people getting clean, and it's just, and people I thought I'd never see, you know, take that step or that it would be possible for them. And I'm not going to say that I learned not to doubt people, you know, and what they're capable of, you know. And I know that some people were looking at me at one point in time and doubting the fact that I was capable of getting clean. You know, and I learned that a long time ago. Like, you can't judge a book by its cover when it comes to recovery. Like, you can't, or addiction. You know, you've got to. Everybody is capable of having recovery. And I think,
and worthy of it.
Right.
You know?
100%.
Like, but you got to put the work in. You know, you got to put the work in. So you were going, and you really have like a Cinderella story when it comes to these charges, especially the fact that you've been incarcerated multiple different times in your life. You've been to prison. You were considered a habitual offender. What happened with this last court case?
So, you know, let's kind of like, okay, so my career. All right, so I got out of bartending. Okay. Had a friend call me, and he was like, you should come try out roofing cells. And I was like, man, no way. You know, I was like, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to come and try to sell shingles to people. You know, hey, let me put a roof on your house. You know, like how do you even do that? You know, and he was like, I'm telling you, you'd be great at it. You know? So I got talked into trying it. Okay, so I go there, get hired, and I didn't do that great. And I was there for, I don't know, 9 months to a year, you know, and I think a lot of it is they didn't really have like a great training system, and that matters in this industry. Like, so Mike Stinnett, who is the founder of the company that I work for now, had been following me on Facebook, and like he had messaged me on Facebook, and he was like, I've been following you on Facebook for 6 months. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, I've got this like 60-something-year-old man telling me he's been following me on Facebook, you know, and then the next message comes and he's like, I would really like for you to come work for me. And I'm like, okay, where is that? You know, and so he was like, I own Windows and More. You know, and he's like, I know that you sell roofing and, you know, siding and gutters. And he was like, that's what I do plus more, you know. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, let me think about it. And he was like, well, at least come in and talk to me, you know, and meet me in person. So that's what I did. And I'm telling you, like, this was a God thing. Like, Mike Stinnett is a God-fearing man, you know, and is a very Christian man, and God put him in my life for a reason, you know, because I had only been clean for like a year, maybe a little under that, you know, and like this guy's following me on Facebook, so I know he knows about my addiction in the past, you know, and why is he wanting me to come work for him, you know, and so I go in and meet with him, and you know, we hit it off. And like, he made me a deal too good to pass up, you know, and he knew I was a single mom, And so he let me work my hours around that so I can drop my kids off at school and I can pick them up during the day and, you know, I can do all the mom things all while supplying for them,
Yeah.
you know. And so I start working for him. And keep in mind, I'm still going through all this court stuff.
Right.
And he knows that. Like, I tell him that up front. I'm like, look, like, I don't think you really know who you're asking to work for you. And, like, and he's like, I know. I'm like, what do you mean you know? He's like, I already know about all that.
Isn't that amazing, though? Like, I say that all the time. Like, all people really genuinely need is, like, that one person to really believe in them. Like, you're just say, like, hey, like, I know who you are, and I'm okay with it, you know? And to give you that shot. Like, you know how, and right. And, like, you don't know how many people.
Yes.
It's like that story in itself is, like, amazing because, like, we just really need one person to see past the addiction. Like, that's not who we are. Prison is not who you are. You know, the addiction was not who you are. And this man was able to see who DK was as a person, and he gave you a shot, you know, to come do something different.
And he did. And so, and of course, so I started working for him. And I'll be there going on 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, this November.
Yeah.
But he was one of the biggest supporters through all that core stuff. Like, he made me get into a networking group, okay? And, like, he's like, you're going to go into this networking group and you're going to go every week. And I was like, I don't want to do that. You know, I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I was like, I'm not good at that stuff. And he was like, well, you'll learn to be good, you know? And he made me do it. And I don't know, but, like, if you know anything about a networking group, like, the companies that are in there together get up and do presentations.
Yeah.
Ever so often. You know? I've never spoke in front of people, you know, and you want me to get up in front of all these people and do this presentation, you know, because getting up in front of a group of people versus going into somebody's home who has called you to be there and giving them a presentation, totally different.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, man, these people own businesses and, like, they're community leaders. And I'm telling you, when I went to court, Mike called the Republican representative for Arkansas. And he called in a favor. And he was like, look, Daryl is a really good person. She has come a long way. This is what her progress has been like. All of that, you know. And the state representative told him, he said, I can't call the judge for her. He said, but here's what she needs to do. She needs to get every character witness letter that she possibly can. And by this time, I've made a name in my community.
Yeah.
You know, people know who I am. And so I got started that day. You know, Mike wrote one. And I mean, I went around to everybody in that networking group, and every single person in there wrote me a character witness letter. And these people own businesses. Like, they're putting their business letterhead on these things. I had school coaches, school teachers, you know, write letters talking about how well I take care of my kids, you know, and people that you never thought in a million years would put their name on you.
Yeah.
You know, and I walk into court with a stack of letters this thick.
But I want you to remember something, though, right? Like, they did that for you, but you put the work in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, granted, like, they were there, and God used them as, like, instruments in your life at the time. But you have to pat yourself on the back because they only did that because of the work that you put in on yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you literally got out there and you hustled in recovery like you did in the streets, right? And then you proved yourself worthy of that, you know? So don't give them all the credit, you know what I mean? Take some credit for yourself, because it takes a lot for people like us, you know what I mean, to pull ourselves out of those places, right? And that conditioning that we've built for ourselves of how to live in the streets, and then totally relearn and to be a whole different person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, my lawyer took those letters in there, and of course I had come up with enough money, you know, partially to the help of Mike. You know, I put in the work to make that money, but, you know, he helped me along the way, you know, and I mean, my lawyer went in there, gave the prosecuting attorney those letters, said, I really need you to read these. I mean, because they were talking 35 years.
Yeah.
We're giving you 35 years. And I mean, I had Y felonies. I mean, you're pretty much doing all of that.
Yeah, you had.
You know?
I remember you had like the school zone within maintaining
Yeah.
a drug premises
Yeah.
within so many feet of a school zone. Yeah, I mean you had
And
some
manufacturing,
serious, right.
and I mean, it was a lot. Like there was like 8 felonies on there, and they weren't the baby felonies like I was doing in the past. You
Right.
know, like this was big girl stuff. And of course I had the gun charge too, and so that, you know, you're going,
Right.
you're getting a year denial on that. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so that court case or that court day ended, and they set another one. And you know, my lawyer had went, okay, well, here's what we would like. Here's what we're asking for. You know, you drop this charge, you combine these two, you know. And the prosecuting attorney was like, no, I'm not doing it. We're getting a continuance. You know, we're gonna handle this later. Girl, he called me later that day, and he was like, are you sitting down? And I was like, why? And he was like, you're getting 6 years probation.
That's amazing.
Girl, I about lost it.
Yeah,
you
I remember we
know,
talked.
like,
You texted me that day.
Yes.
I remember I cried, and it's so crazy. Like we really didn't even know each other, but I remember crying behind it. Never met face to face. You know, but I remember I texted you, and you were like, "They gave me probation," and that was a miracle in itself.
Yeah, especially with what I was facing.
Yeah.
You know, and the prosecuting attorney told my lawyer. He said, I don't think I've ever read this many character witness letters ever, you know, and it's just, he really, that prosecuting attorney really believed that I was a productive member of society that had turned my life around.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, girl, I haven't been in trouble since.
You haven't.
You know what I mean? Like,
And listen, if you're listening today, man, DK has literally made a life for herself. She doesn't like to talk about it. I'll talk about it for her. I mean, she has went from the streets to a businesswoman to the lead. I remember you were like the lead sales associate for that year. You told me you just got a promotion now for the company. Mm-hmm. You're basically running it, you know, to go from living in the streets doing drugs, selling drugs, to making 6 figures a year. And that in itself is kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
Let me ask you though, so what does it look like for you in your recovery today? Like what are some of the things, you know, because we talked about this earlier, like it isn't a one size fits all. What are some things in your life and in your recovery? Like I really want to kind of emphasize that, right? Like if somebody is kind of thinking about wanting to get in recovery or what that looks like what do you do to help maintain you and your sobriety today?
So I help. So I go to NLC Church in Cabot, and you know, Stacy Franks is the one who runs Life Recovery out there.
Yeah.
And that's every other Friday. And we meet this Friday, so it's every other Friday from this Friday from 6 to 8.
If you want to come.
Yes, if you want to come. But she had asked me to be one of the leaders there, and so I am a part of that. Now, I don't go to NA meetings twice a week or 3 like people do, you know, like,
and that's okay.
And recovery does. It looks different for everybody, but, you know, I have my kids around me. I don't go and hang out with a lot of people. Like my life is really, you know, it's just, I don't hang out with people really, you know, I have a select few friends.
Yeah.
And I think part of that kind of goes off of, sometimes you may think you know people and you don't.
Right,
You
for
know,
sure.
and so I really am very selective about who I let in my circle. And, you know, I work out, CrossFit.
You do CrossFit?
Yes, we're
Yes, girl.
CrossFitters. And so, and that really helps me channel my energy. Like if I'm super stressed or if I'm having a hard day or whatever, like that is my channel. And, you know, having a good support system, people you can call. You know, and like I said, like NA meetings, I'm not gonna say they don't work for me. It's just not it's not feasible for me to do those having my 3 children.
Yeah, and I tell
you
people
know,
all the
by
time, man, it
myself.
doesn't matter. When you look at recovery, like I am not a promoter of a fellowship or a place, you know, you find your tribe and you stick with it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Whatever that is for you, right? If it's CrossFit, it's the gym. If it's church, if it is NA, AA, CA, Celebrate Recovery, Life Recovery Group, whatever it is, right? Like you find your people and you stick with it. And if
Mixture of all of it.
Yeah, a
You
mixture
know?
of all of it. Yeah, exactly. Like
Right.
in my recovery, now that I've had, you know, a little over 8 years, I find myself like I just go, you'll find me in all different places, you know, and it's okay, you know, and that's great. I ask all the guests that come on to the podcast, and I want to ask you too, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you
Oh
this,
my gosh.
but if you had a message, you know, to leave to the listener, you know, no matter who it is, right, whether it's somebody in early recovery, somebody, you know, who is struggling in their recovery, maybe it might be a parent or a caregiver, whoever it may be, what is one message that you would like to leave the listeners with?
I would think that one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would have for somebody is you have to take accountability like it's
Absolutely.
medicine,
Yeah.
you know, and like it says in the Bible, if you can't forgive, then how do you expect to be forgiven?
Yeah.
You know, and that includes forgiveness for yourself. It doesn't just mean forgiveness towards other people or wanting people to forgive you. You know, while that is important, it starts with you. Like you have to forgive yourself for all of these things that you've put yourself through in order to grow and to really start taking accountability for the things and the choices that you made.
Yeah.
And once you can come to terms with that, like, I think that's one of the most important things and what is really going to help push you through the barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, DK, thank you so much for taking time to
Thanks
come
for
on
having
Breaking
me.
Quiet. I want to let you know that, like, I am beyond proud of you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure and it's been an honor to watch you walk in your recovery journey just in the short time that we've known each other, right? Like to see the leaps and the bounds and the woman that you are today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Listen, you guys, if you guys need window, I'm going to plug for her. If you need window sidings,
Yes.
the more means more. She is a beast when it comes to the windows and more. And you work for Cabot, what is it called? Windows and More?
Cabot Windows and More.
Cabot Windows and More. Also, you guys, if you are listening right now, I want you to go online and download the Revive AR app. We have the Arkansas Drug Take Back is an event that we do every year in the state of Arkansas, where all your unused and unwanted prescriptions, you take them. You don't have to be people in recovery. You could be anybody. We all know we have the prescriptions sitting in our cabinets that we do not use anymore. Get rid of them. There's no need for them. You can download Revive AR, go on the app, find a drop box or a location near you, and take those medications and get rid of them, because we are literally losing a generation. So thank you so much, DK. Thank you for coming on. Bye.